Yeah.
But what was that, Scott?
Did you review the film?
Someone else on Film Thread did.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know your work.
So,
sorry.
Oh,
perfect. So go ahead and start having a great conversation. And sorry, my brain tired. Make your chat window is open so I can give you a last question in the chat because their next interview is 20 minutes before the hour.
okay. All right. Thank you guys for being here.
Oh, hey, Jason. Hey.
Hi. Hey, Neil. So film as an art form can be used powerfully to teach empathy, and your film in particular, Scott, does a fantastic job of this, while showing some heartbreaking moments dealing with the measles and COVID-19. With all of the disinformation about vaccines out there, a shot in the arm is much needed. The documentary has a quote by Dr. Paul Offit that once facts don't matter, once truth doesn't matter, then it's not a democracy anymore, end quote. And I truly believe that. So with all of the disinformation running rampant on many topics, where do you think people can get the tools to find reliable information?
Oh, well, Neil will weigh in next about the education side. Let's start with humility. Let's start with humility to say, just because I feel something, just because I've heard something, just because I want to believe something is true, is it true? And having the humility to check yourself and have systems in place from honest family members and friends that say, hey, you might be drifting here, to, God forbid, we go and actually find the correct data and experts to help us. So that's really the way that's going to happen. And I'll throw it to Neil, who makes a beautiful point about how much this is connected to how we teach science beyond just STEM.
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of the project, not because I have medical expertise, but I would claim to have expertise in thinking long, hard, and deeply about how people think and how they receive information and what receptors are there to, in what way does new information influence your strongly held belief of whatever it is you think is true. And where did you get that belief? Was it from a charismatic person who told you what you wanted to hear? And that felt so good that it must be true, right? So what I've said before is science, when it's at its best, science when it has peer review and when it's verified, when it's not when it's best, when it's doing what it's supposed to do, when it's all of those things, the science is true whether or not you believe in it. And so the pathway one has to adopt is not taught in school. You just have a fat science textbook and you learn the boldface words and you're, at the end of the chapter and you're tested on it. And where are you ever taught what science is and how and why it works and how and why it's effective and what's going on the frontier versus the objective truths that have been multiply verified that are in the books? Like, where does that happen? I haven't seen it in the classes. You take a lab, but who even remembers their lab? The lab is like some throwaway part of the class. So, and by the way, this critical thinking that would go on would not have to be limited to science. Imagine if critical thinking were taught in your history class. You read some book about some battle and you say, well, who wrote the book? Oh, the people who won the battle wrote the book. Well, all right. Is there some other information I should fold in to my understanding, or might be handed an understanding that might not be the fuller truth? And in that case, maybe there isn't an absolute truth, but there's a more nuanced understanding of what's going on, if it's in the case of the liberal arts. So you could benefit from this on all of these fronts. So here you have people who are saying, I am listening to an expert. There's this lone wolf expert, MD, pedigreed background, who says vaccines are bad. Listen to me because the establishment doesn't want you to know this. Oh my gosh, that's irresistible as clickbait. We all want to see the one thing that's true that the establishment is somehow suppressing or resisting, and watch your bias at that point. Are you going there because you want it to be true, because it feeds your needs? And this film especially having started with a measles focus, pivoting to not pivoting, but expanding to enclose COVID, ended up ended up having to fold into the storytelling all of these other aspects of science and science literacy and the as the social contract. Will you make a decision that's in the interest of someone else,
Yeah.
of their health, and longevity and their security? Are you capable of doing that? If not, what does it mean for you to be a member of a society? What does it mean to take civilization into the future if you're not going to participate in that? And this film became about all of that.
Yeah. On that note, how do we get more people to fulfill the social contract and care about others in society?
Get them to watch the film. That's all.
Yeah.
It's I mean, thank you, Neil. Of course, that's what we're here, is to try and get people to see the film. And it was a wonderful historian, Yuval Harari, who introduced me to the fact that storytelling, from a historical point of view, storytelling is the greatest tool we have to help convince ourselves of how to make the best decisions for all of us, right? It's through stories that we make better decisions. So I'm honored to be a storyteller and to see what this film has done in a theater, bringing people together, bringing people together of very different backgrounds, politically, socially, trust in vaccines, on, and not come to say it's going to do this for you, it's going to do that for you. Just come and see a film and take this journey of what a story can do, and be informed and be moved and be triggered again from like the trauma that we all live through, and laugh and cry together. And then hopefully through that experience, you can come and have a conversation about where we agree more than where we disagree. And one of the places that I find very few people disagree, even though some people try to manipulate the conversation around the social contract, we'll leave them to the side, is that of course we want to believe in the social contract of how we treat each other decently, how we don't throw trash in our neighborhoods, how we don't drink and drive, how we get vaccines, not just to benefit ourselves, but to benefit the entire community and the entire world. These decisions,
especially those who cannot take vaccines medically. And so we
right.
need to protect them by you not having a disease transmitted to them.
Generally speaking, how we treat each other for not just ourselves, but the most fragile, right? And that is the great measure of a successful society, is not just how we look out for ourselves, but how we look out for those who are most fragile. So,
and by the way, Scott, not to be picky, but that larger definition of storytelling, I think it's, well, of course I agree with it. I think it overstates what's actually going on when stories are being told. What's actually going on is, if you tell a story, it's a means of connecting what would otherwise be disparate bits of information into one arc for you to remember. So storytelling, as a benefit to our species, enable people to carry information forward, even from generation to generation, especially before writing was invented. And so a story can give misinformation as well. All right. So the story is not inherently good. It's just inherently effective at getting your attention. We all remember, if not, you see elementary school, it's story time, and the kids huddle on the carpet and everyone is rapt. If you have a good storyteller there, every kids who are otherwise bouncing off the walls, during playtime, they are rapt during story time. And so it could be a fairy tale. It could be, it doesn't matter. If it's a story, it has a power to influence us. And so that's why I don't want to overstate that it is good. It is just, it is a mechanism to organize information so that the participant, the viewer, the listener says, I got it all.
Yeah.
I'm with you here and I feel it.
But yeah, no, thank you. That it is like any tool, like any technology even in art, storytelling is an art and a tool that can be used for good or can be used for disinformation.
Yeah, Nazi Germany was storytelling, right?
Propaganda.
Yeah. There it is. Very effective.
And saying you are propaganda. And it's like, oh my God, how do we how do we check ourselves? Don't just listen to Scott and Neil saying that this film is valid. You can also see the film for yourself. Check to see how we did on both the science validity and our respect for the human condition, right? Were we cynical? Were we skeptical? And we try to move towards skepticism, beautiful, healthy, cynicism, very dangerous. And we're living in a time where people not just embrace cynicism, they almost think it's like cool to be cynical, which is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, and I think you guys did a fantastic job. But in the documentary, we saw how the strain in the healthcare system was affecting nurse Blima Marcus, and we got to see Scott's own family during the lockdown. From a sociological standpoint, do you think we're still dealing with the psychological consequences of the pandemic?
Without question, yeah. It's like we're happy that the film is coming out now with some distance from what we lived through, and or we would not have wanted this film to come out a year ago. But I think it's going to age. We hope it's going to age well with having that distance. But no, I'll tell you a small humble brag story about my own daughter, asking her a few months ago, is there anything that mom or dad could have done differently to make lockdown a little bit more pleasant, a little bit more successful with the teachings, a little bit more satisfying in some way? And she paused and she looked back at me. She said, well, shouldn't I be asking you the same thing? And yes, that is a humble brag about my own daughter. And then I handed her $50. That's a joke. But that humanity, right? That humanity that she said, thank you for looking out for me, but aren't we supposed to be looking out for each other? And that's really the point of the story. So yeah, we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And I hope we will use the tragedy to teach us and remind us how important it is to defend things like the social contract, verifiable truth, science, decency.
I would also add that the COVID variants are still with us, though they're not as lethal and they're not overburdening the healthcare system. And so COVID is not old news. It's still current news. We're just not completely distracted by it anymore. And I agree with Scott. This isn't. It had the film come out 2 years ago, like 2021, then it's a current event film, right? Whereas now it's a film about people and our relationships with each other.
Yes, and Neil, what do you think the chances are that we see another pandemic during our lifetime?
Well, so we're now getting very good at vaccines. The turnaround on a pathogen relative to the vaccine that addresses it, and that will only get better based on everything I've read in the research marketplace of of vaccines as a product. Because it's not just that you make it in the lab; you now have to mass produce it, distribute it. You know, it's an entire system that has to be in place for that to occur. So it may be that we're at risk of other outbreaks, but the consequences would be less than any previous consequence we've encountered. Or another way to answer that question is if pandemics only really come around once a century, I would hope there's enough learning about this pandemic so that we don't make the same mistakes that we did, and that people are a little more enlightened the next time around.
Yeah. I mean, Dr. Paul Offit talks in the film about the biggest problem of the success of the vaccines being that you can't see the effects. So
when they're working, nothing happens.
It's a strange double edge. Yes.
Yeah. So besides this film, how can we spread the word about the success of vaccines?
Well,
aren't you writing something about it? That's why we're talking to you. Okay. What do you think we're on this call for? Okay.
I'm going to be a politician and ignore your part where you said aside from this film and just say
No, you did a great job with this film. Yeah.
Appreciate it. We hope that this film will move people again through the magic of storytelling, and truthful and honest and humble and emotional storytelling. But
there's only so far I can take this. I have very visible platforms, you know, in social media and a radio program, you know, podcast, and I'm on TV, all of that. But film is a very special medium in which I have no creative way to contribute. I'm not that guy. Scott is that guy. So this is and we know, just as in America, our films are cherished for their power of influence on imagining a future, remembering a past, lionizing people who need to be remembered. You know, filmmaking is powerful, and I'm honored to have been given a seat at this filmmaking table, because I can take everything I knew and learned from the rest of my activities and say, how can I add that to this, to what is already potent storytelling?
Yeah, and like you said, Neil, hopefully I can help spread the word about this film, because it's a fantastic film. But on a lighter note, for Neil, what was it like being in Scooby-Doo? And did you?
You know, I might have been in more than once, but there's one where we're on a spaceship or something.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I just watched that with my son the other
You
day.
just did. Yeah. So it's funny because there's some cartoons where I play myself, and then there's others where I'm something else. So I was actually in Disney XD's series Gravity Falls, where I was the voice of a pig. Okay, so is that a cameo? I don't know.
Is that typecasting? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
So here's the thing. When artists call, I have a very low bar for what I'll agree to. And for example, by the way, Scooby-Doo is a very high bar, but the low bar here is I have a cameo in Sharknado 6.
Yeah, the best one, really.
Of all 6, that's the
one.
So when an artist wants to throw a little bit of science into their craft, I'm there for them, because they didn't have to call me, and they then make stuff up, but that's not good. You want it to be authentic. If they're attracted or inspired by science, you want the science to be as authentic as possible when it serves as the artist's muse. And I'm not, in spite of how I'm typecast, I'm not a stickler that you get every detail right. It's a Mark Twain philosophy, which is first get your facts straight, then distort them at your leisure. That's the advice for the artist. Yeah.
The antis are gonna jump all over that.
No. They're not first getting their facts straight. That's the problem.
That's true. That's
true.
Not getting facts straight at all. But thank you for, at least you do have a high bar for the documentaries you choose to work on. So I hope.
Yeah. It was a high bar, Scott.
Yeah. Thank you. And Scott, I read that you got your start working with Roger Corman. Do you have any stories about Roger?
Stories about Roger. I only got to have dinner with Roger once. For your listeners who don't know, Roger Corman was an icon of independent, low-budget films, giving starts to people like Martin Scorsese, Ron Howard, and of course myself. Because I don't get listed. That's going to be the last time I ever get listed with them.
Martin Scorsese, Ron Howard, and Scott.
That's it. That was it, Neil. I had my one chance to do that.
Okay, all right.
And these were super low budget. I did Showtime movies where I was like second unit director, and it was amazing. It was they were very fast, and the budgets were low, and some of the production value was very, very low. But the spirit, his love of storytelling, his love of what the magic of movies is, it outweighs some of the cheesy films that he made. Or I'm sorry, actually are inform those films as well. He truly loves the art of filmmaking. It was an honor to work with him.
Great. And where can people see your documentary, A Shot in the Arm?
Sure. So Shot in the Arm, we're indie as it gets. So we are rolling out slowly, but with great passion, and had a great response so far. So we're opening in theaters in New York City on November 2nd, starting at the iconic Angelica Film Center, which is a great honor that they chose to play the film. And then moving to Los Angeles and playing at the Laemmle's in Glendale. Again, an honor to be picked by Greg Laemmle and their wonderful tradition of playing great films. And then we'll be moving to other theaters. But the best way to support us and find out more is to go to shotinthearmmovie.com or follow me on all the socials, mostly hashtag Scott Hamilton Kennedy, but easily found. And to find out more, request screenings of your local theaters, write to us and let's book a screening at your local hospital, at your local library, on and on. And then we're moving towards being on PBS in 2024. So we're easy
streaming on PBS.
Yeah, come find us.
Mhm.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, guys, for your time.
All right,
great.
Jason.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks for the
Jason.
support.
All right. Thanks.